Welcome,
Coffee.
everyone. We're back finally with another episode of Cinematic Realms. I've been off for a while, but got a really special episode for you guys today. I'm talking about, surprise, surprise, the Dark Crystal. Like I haven't done a couple of other streams about it already. Um, I'm welcoming today some fantastic guests. I've got Phil and Sydney uh, from Trial by Stone, the Dark Crystal podcast. I'm honored to have you guys on here.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
No,
you so
thanks for
much.
thanks for inviting us on.
Yeah, it's funny because the topic for today is the film The Dark Crystal, but I'm going to start off by talking about the show Age of Resistance, because that's what got me to listen to your guys' podcast.
Aw.
Because especially once back when it was sort of in the air about whether it would get canceled or whether it would get renewed.
Mm.
And I just wanted more Age of Resistance content. And so I started listening to you guys. And then, of course, the cancellation happened, and
Yes.
You stopped listening, right?
my heart was
that was it. Yeah.
my heart was shattered. But
Yeah.
then I started to really value even more being able to turn on your guys' podcast and just get Dark Crystal content, and you guys love it so much, and I'll be honest, when I hear that opening montage of sound clips from the movie and from the show, I get this big grin on my face because I'm like, all right,
Isn't it great?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
I didn't do it. That's all Phil.
It is. Yeah, that was me for the intro. Yeah, I've always because even when I started the podcast, back then it was just like clips from the Dark Crystal, and I always liked sort of that radio kind of vibe that you hear some other podcasts or in radio in general. So it was sort of like my attempt of trying to do that and incorporate the Trial by Stone sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, once Age of Resistance came out, then it's like, oh, that's sweet. I can finally use some play around with some audio from the show. So which is really cool.
Yeah.
So
I was a listener of the podcast for a while before I came on as a co-host, and same exact thing. When that intro Phil put together would come on, I was usually on my way to work or from work, and I would just get so hyped, just like da, 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 da. So I feel you.
Yeah, especially the way it ends with Aughra going, "Now go, you heroes of Thra."
Heroes of Thra.
It's so great, and I feel like what's so great, because full disclosure, and this is on topic because we're talking about it. I've always admired the original film, but I don't think I don't think I had given my heart over to Dark Crystal until Age of Resistance. And so it's just, I feel like I've discovered this new family, and you guys have really helped facilitate that just through listening to the podcast. And then I found the Crystal Shard, the Facebook group, and so it's been great, because otherwise I would have stumbled onto this, discovered this really fantastic show, but then had to read up on all the stuff just by my lonesome, and that would have sucked. And so I'm just overjoyed to have found you guys and everybody else, and to now have you on again. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better plug than that.
I know. Same here.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John. I mean, it's been really cool that's the thing with Age of Resistance, that it really opened up to, more people getting into Dark Crystal for the first time. And I think, really just a big example of which was, of course, early this month, of course, being Inktober, and day one just happens to be Crystal as a theme, and just seeing a lot of the Dark Crystal fan art from everyone, that's just yes, what a great way to start the month.
It's still pouring in. We're almost 10 days into October now, and we're still seeing an influx of those day one posts of all of these Dark Crystal artists, and it's just it's so nice.
I know, yeah.
It's so nice. I love it.
And
it's opened the door to seeing so many like new artists to follow that I haven't. I mean, they're not necessarily new, but they're new to me. that I'm like, oh yeah, more fans, and we keep hearing that same story amongst a lot of them that John, you just expressed, were people who were either like not as familiar with the movie, or they just like had seen the movie but didn't have as much of a connection to it for one reason or another, but then that fandom was reawakened in them thanks to Age of Resistance. There's so much of that, and like I honestly love it, because as somebody who's been a fan of the original movie since I was 4 years old and had like no one else my age or even remotely anywhere near my age who was like knew what I was talking about when I would say how much I love this movie. Like the best I got would be if I was like, I love the Dark Crystal, and somebody in my class would be like, oh, I'm not allowed to watch that, it's too scary. And I'd be like, So now I'm seeing new babies being born who can join my cult, and it's like, yes, finally validated. I'm not just the creepy kid who likes puppets in the corner. Jeez.
Yeah, I will say that is probably something that kept me at arm's length as a kid. That I remember being little and seeing the movie and being terrified by the Skeksis. Absolutely terrified.
Gateway horror, man. Gateway horror. It does not get enough credit as a gateway horror movie. Everybody wants to say Gremlins is the ultimate gateway horror movie to get kids like interested in horror. Nah. It's the Dark Crystal, 100%. Like, you look in the horror community, there's been so much of an outpour of love for Age of Resistance in fandoms and like posts and Facebook groups that typically have nothing to do with Dark Crystal. You know, they're horror movie groups. That's another circle that I tend to frequent. I'm also a big horror movie buff, but coincidence? I think not. Absolutely not. It is terrifying, but I was into that because I was a weirdo. So that spooky crap.
I want to take a moment real quick just to say hi to the folks in the chat, because these are pretty much my family, because we all basically have a Slack group together where we all get together and we basically hang out. I want to say hi to Lady Leaf Underhill, who like I don't think has ever missed a single one of these streams.
That is awesome. Yeah.
And we have Jolie, Danny McKay, Kate Bertinsky, and thank you so much, guys. And of course, my brother, Here Be Dragons, Mr. Steven Stark. This is the guy who I was pretty much a loner and too shy to talk to anybody like online, and he basically metaphorically grabbed me by the shirt and pulled me into his circle. So I thank you, sir.
Oh, he's your Ethan. We have a guy like that named Ethan. When he sees this, he's gonna laugh. But yeah, I love that. Yeah, big props
and then Blue Lemons, who is going to be joining me in a couple weeks when I do a discussion on the Green Knight. So
oh yes.
I love that movie. I'm excited.
We're gonna talk later then.
I'm one of like 2 people I know in the whole world who like that movie, so I'm kind of excited to talk about it. So,
it's coming out on Tuesday on 4K, and I'm just like jumping out of my skin. I can't wait.
It will be mine.
But anyway, if I start down the road on that movie, the stream will become about that film.
Yeah.
So I have to be
The
careful.
Green Crystal. Wait, what?
But
The Dark Knight. Wait, that's another movie.
But yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But I just want to start off because as we were talking about, you guys have been fans of the film going back such a long time. So I just want to ask you guys, how did it start with you?
Bill, you go first.
All right, I'll go first.
I've been talking a lot.
It's all good. So I grew up probably in the VHS era of the Dark Crystal. But I think actually my parents actually might have recorded off the TV. So I don't think I actually owned, like, had a copy of the film, probably till DVD came out, of course, and, you know, buy so many different versions of Blu-ray and 4K, of course. But I'm very certain it was, the parents recorded off the TV, and so I had this copy of it that I just, you know, I'd always watch it as a kid, probably. At least, I don't know, like a week, every week or a couple of months. It was something that it was always on my playthroughs of, like, watching movies on VHS. You know, I mean, really you know, of course my, you know, thinking about horror, like my trilogy, childhood horror would be Dark Crystal, Return to Oz, and Temple of Doom. Yes. So they were those three films. Kalima, yeah. And that was actually cool, watching it recently on 4K. So that was kind of cool, just looking, watching back on it. But but those three films, they were the ones that I'd watch a lot. And of course, Return of the Jedi, probably, you know, the Star Wars films, but Return of the Jedi probably the most out of them. But yes.
Nice.
Return of the Jedi, yes, I know. Exactly. So it was just through that VHS, and just being so immersed with the world of Thra. And I think for myself, I think I connected to Jen a lot because, you know, being the only Gelfling, and I think, I mean, for me, like I used to live out in a rural town, or not town, but rural suburb, Strathewen, and that was, you know, lived on a 300-acre farm. So it was my grandparents' farm, and they did lemons and peaches and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, that was only a small portion of the farm, but everything else was all land. So I think it was like able to sort of connect to thinking that where I lived was sort of like a piece of Thra in itself. So I think that's what really connected me to that. And so and then really wasn't until, you know, then years go by and it's like, well, it's just a one film franchise. So, you know, move on to other things. And it wasn't really till film school. And I saw like went to this movie collectible store, and you know, I saw the poster for the Dark Crystal, the Amsel poster, and I saw that. I'm just like, wow, hadn't seen that in such a long time, and so I'm like, I got to buy this poster. So I bought it on the spot, pretty much. Yeah,
it's seriously one of the best posters ever made. I mean,
yeah, definitely, yeah. Because I know Brian Froud. I think he did do a poster, but I know they went with Amsel. But the Amsel still holds up really well. And bought the poster, and I'm like, you know, I need to revisit this film. And then I think by that time was when, you know, after watching the film and then finding out more about, you know, if there's any other Dark Crystal stuff that's sort of happening. And I think there might have been Creation Myths was starting to come out.
Oh, yeah.
Or the manga, The Legends of Dark Crystal. There might have been a couple of years later, but I think they threw that, and then sort of, from then on, and then, you know, years later in 2014, I'm just like, I probably should do a podcast. You know, I've always wanted to do a podcast, and I'm like, you know, thinking of all these different ideas. I'm like, actually, you know, what about Dark Crystal? And I looked, and no one's done it, but, you know, people have done episodes about the Dark Crystal, talking about the film, but not a whole podcast dedicated to it. So I'm like, you know what? I'm actually gonna have a go at this. And like, I mean, it was actually around the time that the website, that darkcrystal.com, that they were trying to ramp up like the franchise a bit more, and they had that author quest contest, which Joe won, and J.M. Lee. So and he was my first guest for the first episode. So and that was like a lot of fun. And then
I went back to I did go back to listen to that, and like it's funny because you'd think with me being such a big Age of Resistance fan that I would have eaten up those YA books immediately, but it's almost like I've got them on my shelf. It's almost like I still need to keep like holding this off as something that I've still got.
Listen, John, look at me in the eyes right now. Read them. Do it. Okay? Do it right now. When we're done, you go, you pick up the book, you read it, and then you'll be like, thank you. God, my life is better now. Sydnni, thank you. And then you text me and you'd be like, you were right. And I'll be like, I know. That's what's going to happen. So read them. Just saying.
Yeah. No, if you ever get a chance, they've been they're really good books. Just a different, perspective on sort of the events of Age of Resistance through, Naya and Kylan. And so. I
will say 2 notes. One, Erin's going to make some enemies here and now because she does not like the Dark Crystal because the puppets give her nightmares.
Wait, you don't like that?
Yeah.
Jeez,
and 2, pretty much everybody in the chat is giving me grief right now for the fact that I shaved my beard the other day. They do not like clean-shaven John. They prefer John with a beard. So.
See, this is the first version of John that I've seen face to face, so I have, nothing to really compare it to on a personal level, but I tend to prefer when men have beards, but I'm kind of biased. I have a scruffy Scotsman at my side, and I like his beard, so I'm an off and on with the beard. But I mean, I know my hair's a bit crazy just because, well, where I am, all the restrictions, we can't go to any barbers or any, I love the wild outback look on you.
Yeah. Some do, I know. So no, it's all good.
I love that wild outback look for you, though, Phil. I think you work it.
Yeah, the crazy.
You don't look crazy at all. You just look like I could trust you with my knife, and you keep me safe from giant bugs and stuff. So
yeah,
I'm in support of it. Australia is a terrifying place.
It can be, yeah.
No. Anyway, sorry for derailing.
No,
that's
never.
Right. Yeah.
Queen of derailing. Queen. Don't even. Is it my turn now? I don't want to cut Phil off from his epic backstory.
I think that was pretty much it. Yeah. So got with the podcast going, and it all went pretty good. And it was always one of those things where it kept doing the podcast, and then Age of Resistance once the announcement came out, like that really changed a lot for the podcast, and that was a very big deal.
It must have thrown you guys for such a loop because they just announced it all of a sudden, and they
we didn't we didn't have any inside scoops or anything like that from them, and we had so many people who've worked on Dark Crystal or worked on books like Joe, and did not got told anything, so that really it blew me away, and also because Jamie involved with the podcast, that he was the one that told me about it. He's just like, wake up, Phil, because it was all happening while I was asleep. Due to time zones and me being from the future.
You are from the future.
So that really.
So you should have known first.
I know.
Jeez.
Why didn't they tell me?
Because you were too busy wrestling kangaroos, I swear.
Yes.
Obviously, you were fending off the giant spiders. Friggin' tremors over there. It was a massive surprise when they announced it, but also kind of not at the same time, because for many years, the Henson Company had been trying to get a Dark Crystal sequel film off the ground, and they had announced it a bunch of times saying this is happening, this is in production, and then it kept just not happening. It kept getting canceled, it would never just get off the ground, to the point that there was actually a skit in Robot Chicken. There was a little segment in Robot Chicken that was actually kind of hilarious, where they do the Dark Crystal rap, and it's it's like a summary of the whole entire film, but it's like a rap, and with the little claymation Jen and Kira. It's hilarious. Highly recommend if you look up Robot Chicken Dark Crystal. But the whole point of it, it opens up with the studio exec dolls talking about how, man, this Dark Crystal sequel failed again. It's never gonna happen. Why can't we get it to work? We just need to make it cooler for the kids. How can we make the Dark Crystal cooler for the kids? And then they make it a whole rap video. But it was a running joke that it's we're never going to get this sequel. All we're going to have is this movie and then expanded universe comics and stuff, which of course, those of us who are diehard fans would clearly throw our money at any book they put out. But we wanted more puppets.
Oh, they're awesome.
Yeah.
They are. They're phenomenal.
Well, that's the thing about with Power. It was almost close to actually being filmed in Sydney in Australia. And I think I remember I actually tried to write a letter and apply to, possibly work on the film in some capacity, even if I had to, fly over to Sydney to do that.
The place,
so,
not me.
Yes. No, the place, Sydney. Yes. Yeah. Sydney, Australia.
I was like, you didn't know yet.
I know. Yeah.
I get that all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a time that was. That was wild. And then they announced it, and it did feel like it was right at a time when we had all collectively kind of given up. We were like accepted that it was never going to happen. Like we were just, we were kicked while we were down. It was the feeling like it's just never going to happen, guys. The way I think a lot of people are feeling about season 2 right now. And
I was going to say,
it's a familiar feeling.
It's a whole different world from now.
But I do say, like, I remember experiencing that the first time, like, we're never going to get any more Dark Crystal. And then suddenly it was like, yeah, you are. You're going to get a series. Oh, Netflix. And we were just like, what? What? So I'm like, okay, we've had this feeling before of hopelessness and, it's over for us. We got to just be grateful for what we have. And, like, we're not going to get any more. We felt that before, and look what happened. So I'm never going to give up hope that somebody will pick up the torch and something will happen. And it wasn't what we expected to happen. We always thought it was going to be a sequel film. And we were all like, why aren't we getting a sequel film? And that's not what we got. But what we got was amazeballs. So what could happen next? Maybe not what we expect, but that doesn't necessarily mean it won't be awesome.
I remember when the show got announced, even though I certainly was not on the level of, loving the Dark Crystal like you guys, but I remember thinking, because I had gone to see the film re-released in theaters when they did the 4K version, and then I know the first time I revisited it had been a few years before on Blu-ray, and so I remember when they made that announcement, I was like, I am so excited for an expanded look at this universe, to be able to really dive into the mythology of the story, because there's so much that they can do with it. But anyway, we're talking about the here and now. I want to hear the beginning for you, Sydnni, and how did it start?
Okay, all right. Imagine this. I'm 4 years old. I'm all of 3 feet tall. I was a very small child. I'm still a very small person, but I was a very small child. And I used to wander the aisles of the VHS rental store. It was like a nightly activity that my mom and I would go and take a walk down the street to go to the video store. And the owner of the video store, knew me. Knew my name. He'd be excited when I would come in, because even if we didn't rent anything that night, it was part of my routine to comb the aisles and admire all of the VHS covers. And my mom worked in the movie industry as a makeup artist at the time, and so she was before
jealous.
We had IMDb.
Just saying, jealous.
She's pretty cool. But she was IMDb before IMDb was a thing. My mom was the human IMDb. Every time I was I wanted to know something about a movie, I'd be tell me about this one. And she'd be oh, well, that one has this, and he was also in this, and you'd probably really like this movie if you like that one. And even from a really young age, that was just kind of the dynamic my mom and I had. And one of the movies I loved renting all the time was Labyrinth. That was, I don't even remember the first time I saw Labyrinth, because it was always on when I was an infant. So I don't remember first being exposed to the magic of David Bowie, because it was just always there. And one of these days that I was combing the aisles of the video store, I was going to reach for Labyrinth again, and next to it was the Dark Crystal, and it was the VHS cover that had the lime green clamshell and the sort of cartoony styled cover. Yeah. And really, really vibrant colors. It's hot magenta juxtaposed against the neon lime green plastic clamshell. And I was like, what is that? It has a big shiny purple rock on it. It's got a creepy bird guy. It's got these little elf fairy looking creatures. I want that. What is that? I judged the book by its cover, so to speak. And my mom was like, oh, you know what? You would really like that one because, and she proceeded to IMDb me about how it's related to Labyrinth and the Muppets and Fraggle Rock. And also Return to Oz was another one that I loved as a kid as well. And how it was similar to other movies that I loved. And she was like, you know, I kind of never really thought about putting it on because it is kind of scary, but I should have known better because baby Sydnni, was already really into things that were too scary for a 4-year-old at the time. She often found me wandering the horror movie aisle and, you know, looking at movies that I wasn't ready to rent yet, but that I really wished one day I'll watch this movie that has the terrifying cover on it. And she was like, I think my mom understood that I was going to be a horror fan someday and that I was already a fantasy fan and that I love puppets. And this was the perfect movie to sort of open that gate and test the waters of how weird and how spooky I was willing to get. And I loved it right off the bat. It was one of those ones that after that first night renting it, I was hooked, and we went back and rented it. It was in my regular rotation, watching that VHS. And I think part of the reason why we didn't own it for a long time as a VHS, because many of the ones that I owned, I kind of destroyed by watching so often. Like, I would play them over and over and, like, rewind. And so, like, all of my childhood VHSs, which are still kept in a vault somewhere, you open them and they're just goop. They're just melted. They're just decimated because I just watched them over and over. And so my mom, up to a certain point, she was like, we're just going to exclusively rent for a while because if you own it, you're gonna kill it in a month. And we don't want to do that. But yeah, so due to the nature of it being so kind of weird and creepy, openly, I didn't have a lot of other peers my age for a very long time who even A, knew what it was, or B, were interested because it was weird and creepy and puppets, what? And I couldn't understand that mentality because I was like, but it's so cool. Like, the fact that there were 0 humans and it was a world that was entirely just not like ours in any way. Everything was real, but fantastical and just so immersive. And like the fact that and look at that mystic. Look at him. He's magnificent. Like, from the first moment when he's plucking the little harp and that song when they're going in the Valley of the Mystics and that music that plays, like, I was so sucked in. I was just like, I want to live there. I want to chill with these old dudes. I want to listen to this music all day. I want to be like, oh, like they are.
And can I say that when I revisited this film for the first time since childhood, I think back when the original Blu-ray came out, like, as soon as the Mystics started singing, I was like, you know how you haven't seen something since you were a tiny little kid, and then all of a sudden you just have to get one little taste of it and everything clicks back.
Flooding back to you?
Yeah, and that's how I felt. And same thing when the first time the Chamberlain comes on and you hear his I was like, the Chamberlain!
Signature.
Yeah. Oh, wow. All my childhood traumas revisited. Like, yeah, I walked a fine line between fascination and trauma, though. Like, if it freaked me out, I was kind of like, I think I like this. What?
Yeah, the good kind of freaking out, yeah.
Yeah, and I think a huge part of that was, again, just because my mom was a makeup artist, and most of the makeup that she specialized in was special effects and or horror, so she did a lot of monster effects. She did a lot of blood and guts, and so a lot of the time I would see her work, and she had to kind of find a way to not necessarily desensitize me, but to make it so that seeing these things was not necessarily traumatic because I understood what it was and what went into it and how this isn't real. This is actually gum, and this is pancake syrup that we add a little color to. And like, so it became, that kind of thing became fascinating to me. I became fascinated in how the macabre and the creepy was accomplished and married with fantasy and elements that are beautiful. So the process of watching the movie, like, you go through that initial, like, when you first see the Skeksis, but then completely juxtaposed and turned on its head. When you see Kira.
Aaron is wanting to kill me right now. Just
Embrace it. Embrace the trauma. Just, flip it around. Turn that frown upside down and love it. That's what you got to do. So, but then when we get to the swamp, I will never forget the way I felt in my heart when Kira, like, took her hood off and revealed her beautiful freckles and her beautiful blonde bangs and her little braids and her eyes, and just like the most gorgeous puppet to this day, the most gorgeous puppet ever created, and one of just the most wholesome, sweet, amazing. She's my princess. And I was definitely also, you know, just like every other 90s kid, super into Disney movies. But she was my princess, and I wanted to be Kira from day one. And now I'm 31 years old, and I have a cat named Kira. And I strive to be Kira. I love her with all my heart, because she's just the fact that she had the animal abilities, and the, you know, that moment with her wings, when you realize that, oh, she has wings, what? And of course you don't have wings, you're a boy. Of course, everyone.
I was watching it this morning, just the way she says it. She's like,
of course not.
Of course you don't. You're a boy.
Duh. Ew. So yeah, and you know, the rest is really the same story that I think a lot of Dark Crystal fans of the original movie shared, which is I was just really into it for so long and holding on to the hope that we could get more someday or meet other people, and then like through sort of that transition of Age of Resistance being on the horizon, all the groups and communities started forming, and I found Philip's podcast, and I was not a co-host yet. He had been doing it already since way before, and I found him when I had started reading the Jolie novels, and like we had just gotten the announcement of Age of Resistance happening, and I was like, I got to see what else is out there. And I think somebody in the Crystal Shard posted a link to the podcast, and I was like, a podcast? Other people talking about this? Like, yes. And I listened to it every day on my way home from work, and whether it was just Phil by himself talking, I was riveted. If it was Phil, Jamie, Ethan, if they had guests on, like the episode with Jolie, I loved, because I went back and listened to that one because I was really getting into the books, and I was like, other people are talking about this. Like, yeah, and really I got this position being Phil's co-host through being the enthusiastic dork you see here. Because anytime I was asked to share this story, I was like, oh, well, let me tell you, because I've been waiting 30 years to talk about this. Yeah. Finally, you know, my enthusiasm, I guess, was the missing piece that they needed in their family, and I'm very grateful. So it's opened a lot of great doors for me. I'm super, super grateful is the name of the game right now. Just to know these people that I've met, like Philip, like Jamie, like you, and all the people who are commenting on our stuff, like engaging with us and telling us how cool it is to have people talking about it. I'm like, yeah, isn't it great? It's the best. So I'm so happy. That's it, man. That's my story. I could go on for a million years, but enthusiastic dork is that's my brand.
Yeah, I think like it's so important, like when you feel so passionately about something, you want to reach out and just tell other people and find people who understand. I think that was like, I remember I wrote just like a quick, it wouldn't be right to call it an article because it was very short, but it was sort of just like a blurb talking about my sort of discovery of Age of Resistance and how much I had fallen in love with the Dark Crystal through it, and how great I had felt finding people who shared that. And I remember I posted that on, in the Crystal Shard, and it was just because I had things that I felt I needed to get out. It was just thoughts that were inside, and and that's what's so great also about the community that I've found, amongst the people who are in the chat and in my other stream I do, which is called Here Be Dragons, which was predominantly, grew out of my Game of Thrones fandom, and it's just this joy of having people who share the thing that you love, and being able to just not even necessarily all the time go on about how much you love it, but just knowing that you're sharing that space with people who get it, who get you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it does build up over time, all of the like, I want so much to freak out about this thing and nobody cares. Like I was fortunate enough to have my mom, get it. She understood right off the bat what kind of a person she was dealing with here. So I was blessed in that regard. But in terms of, having peers and having other people who are not related to you, it's validating, and that's a normal human desire to have, that we all want to feel a little bit defined, a little bit seen, a little bit understood. And even though to an extent we can never fully experience that all together, like we are all individuals, but that's a very human thing to want and to grasp onto any little bit of it we can get. And to me, the Dark Crystal is just like the perfect way to find that, because it's mostly all other weird kids. It's mostly all other artistic kids who would rather have been hiding underneath the slide drawing pictures of fantasy worlds than throwing the frisbee around. And not to shame frisbee throwers, I'm just saying, a lot of Dark Crystal fans were awkward art kids, and which is why now you see so much of the Dark Crystal community, or people who are discovering Age of Resistance, are coming out with this amazing fan art, fan fiction,
cosplay, or
cosplayers,
videos.
I'm in awe of it because especially over on Tumblr, I see obscene amounts of art for the Dark Crystal more than anything else. Like, other things will have just like, memes and, pictures from various things. But with the Dark Crystal, it's like, you've got all this just amazing art.
Yeah.
And I'm not capable of any of that, but it's just so wonderful to see. And because I think so much of the Dark Crystal is the design of the world, so it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I did go on to become an art teacher and I was a theater major in school, and I was all about performing arts and visual arts at the same time. And all I did was art. I have only a right side of my brain and no left side of my brain. Like, don't ask me to solve a quadratic formula or figure out anything logical, because I don't have a drop of Spock in me, but I am nothing but creative juices. And the Dark Crystal franchise is just gasoline for that kind of mentality. I'm just like, there's so much to be inspired by here, because I think part of it is because of how much we've been teased with this world. What we've been given has been beautiful, and we have all of this amazing imagery and this lore, but we haven't been shown all of it. There's so much of it that we haven't seen, and so that inspires all the artists who are fans of it to like, well, I guess I got to make it myself. What would this look like?
There's still like a few missing pieces, I guess, like that sort of up to us at times, to have fun with that world.
And or become cosplayers, and okay, well, I guess they're not going to give me another season. I might as well dress like I live there and act like it for a little while. Like, hey, no shame. Like, I get it. If I could dress like Kira and go frolic in the forest for my life, I would gladly do that. Very easily. And it's funny, Phil, that you say you grew up on a big ranch, because a good chunk of my childhood I grew up on a ranch also. I'm currently staying there right now. My grandparents live on a 40-acre ranch up near Yosemite National Park in the middle of the forest. And I did a lot of the same sort of thing you were describing, where like I would kind of escape off into the fantasy world and go run around the trees and pretend I was in Thra, and like, so yeah, some about Lonely Ranch kids also, I think, really like Dark Crystal.
Yeah.
So for that little niche group of Lonely Ranch artsy kids who are out there, we're here for you.
Yeah.
That's we're your people.
Okay, so now we've delved into the background of your guys' love for the movie.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and talk a bit about the film itself, since that's what we're here for. I don't even know where to start because it starts off and I don't necessarily want to go through it in any chronological way, but it does start off in this, very mythological way with the opening narration, and it feels like a very old tale, and I know that was very much on purpose. To sort of ground it, and I know in the commentary Brian Froud talks about this is such an alien type of world, so it sort of grounds it in the familiar, in the fact that this is a hero's journey that we recognize, and but
the fact that it's a very simple plot. When you think about it, it's all about the world building. It's all about the setting, the creatures, the world, and all of the other details of that are just kind of accessories to it. We're here to set foot in this other fantasy world and live there for a little bit. And I think as such, the actual story that we're being shown had to be pretty straightforward and like just a typical fable format. Because otherwise, I think it would have been too much information. I think for our first exposure to Thra and this world, if it had been a super complex storyline that was like, I don't know, Christopher Nolan movie or something, like it would have been, it would have been like overload, like from a sensory perspective. Like you really need to be given the chance to stop and absorb every tree that you're looking at in all of the shots, and be able to figure out which of those things are puppets, what's moving, to notice the things that look familiar or look completely alien, and like, why does the sky look like that, and like, who are these creatures? And there's so much going on as you're watching it that you're wondering about and asking questions. And I think if they were to like pollute that with too much story, I think it'd be a mess, personally. So I love the fact that it's a very simple fable. It is folklore, and so much of our culture comes from that type of storytelling. Across the world, so much of our cultures come from that type of storytelling. So it's very unifying in that way, I think. So I love that about it.
And I think that was like the thing with the Dark Crystal is, I mean, it is a very simple point A to point B kind of story. Jen getting the crystal, Kara comes along, save the day and whatnot. But I think, I mean, that's the amazing thing with Dark Crystal is of course, just how immersive the world is. But also, I think, well, that's the thing. I think the creation of the world was sort of like the main priority before the story. And I think that's very evident, like, based on the amount of work that it did to, bring all these characters to life, like with the Skeksis and the Mystics, and and that always just seemed to be just like the priority, when they were trying to make the film. And of course, I mean, not only that, but this was Jim Henson's like first feature film, like outside of the Muppets. So I know they took like a lot of risks, like with this film, because I mean, Jim, I read his that biography by Brian J. Jones, which is a brilliant biography. If you ever get a chance to check it out, it's really great stuff. But yeah, he like Jim seemed to always want to be thinking forward of the ideas. Like he's doing Muppets this time, but he was thinking much further ahead of like future ideas or projects, and Dark Crystal just happened to be one of them. So I think when he got onto the Dark Crystal, getting Frouds on and just really develop the world first before sort of nailing down the story. So I
feel like you don't see a lot of that too. It makes it very unique. No. Like even though the plot and the formula of the story is not particularly unique, what makes it unique is the fact, well, I mean, there's a million things that make it unique, but for the context of right now, what makes it unique is the fact that it was story came secondary to just world and all of here is this universe that we're introducing you to, and we're just showing you one little story that happens here, but there's millions of stories here because this is this huge expansive world, and we're just giving you a little taste of it and how massive it is. And I don't think there have been a lot of other films that have been formulated that way, where it was world building first and then story kind of secondary. And that doesn't mean the story isn't good. That's not to say that a simple story isn't wonderful, because again, I think if it were more complex than it was, it wouldn't have worked at all. And I don't think it would have had the success that it did have, you know, in the later years. And that fable quality of it it's essential. But it is essential.
And I guess, you know, for those that wanted the complexity within the Dark Crystal, you know, story, you got World of the Dark Crystal, you know, which was the tie-in book that Brian Froud did. And there's a lot of information, like even in that book, even thinking about like all the information that was out, like at 1982 or 83, you know, that this backstory that sort of Brian Froud sort of, you know, wrote and all that kind of stuff was pretty cool.
Here's a simple story in a complex world, and if you want more of that complexity, here's all this supplementary material that you can accompany watching the movie with. If you want to dive in a little deeper and get nuts, here you go. And like, we don't really do that anymore. And I mean, we didn't really do it a lot to begin with, but we especially don't do it anymore, because now it's like, one movie comes out, it's successful, cool, let's make 47 more of them and remake it 3 times. Like, we're all about the oversaturation now. It's the opposite of what the Dark Crystal has done. And you know, there's something to be said about that, the magic of kind of not oversaturating things.
I mean, even if you look at something like Lord of the Rings, especially with the Fellowship of the Ring in particular, it's not complicated. It's, here's this evil thing, it needs to be destroyed. Let's go walk and destroy it.
The skeleton of the plot is very straightforward.
But it's the world that it exists in, and the characters, and so sometimes I think that, you know, in today's world, we do put too much emphasis on complicated plots, because some of the best stories are very simple. And
the multiverse, and you know, you like this, here's this, here's this, here's this, let's give you a backstory for every single one of these characters. And like,
don't even get me started.
So to me, I think of it like with the Lord of the Rings and with Dark Crystal, it's sort of like you have your pathway that you can follow along the main storyline of what you've been given, the story of Jen or the story of Frodo. You can follow along that corridor, but with each new character that you're introduced, there's a doorway that you can open up and go and explore these other rooms should you decide to. Here are the avenues that if you really want to look into it, you can get this book and learn about Aragorn and like who the Dunedain are, and like you can open that book up and find out, you know, how are he and Arwen actually kind of related? Let's look at their lineage and how is who were his parents, and like you can go down that road, but it's not given to you up front. Like so then you don't get a chance to get derailed. You're in charge of your own derailment. If you decide like, wow, I really liked following along that hallway of the main plot, now I want to go explore the other rooms, do you have the means to go do that? Whereas now it's sort of like, we're going to do a full open house, open up every room, and we're going to make a movie about every room and release them all within a span of 3 years, and like you're going to have to watch all 47 of them. Like it's a very different vibe, and I kind of miss the way of the fairy tale. We need to get back to our roots a little bit. And I sound like a grandpa. I sound like a get off my lawn back in my day. We walked 8 miles in the snow and we liked it. Like, but you know, there's something to be said about that simple folk tale, that fable, that I miss it. And Dark Crystal is always just a nice, refreshing journey back to that very Lord of the Ringsian vibe. I miss it. I love it.
It's a very traditional fantasy vibe,
Yeah, that exposure, that first exposure to the world is what sets us up to be able to enjoy something like Age of Resistance.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't, even though Age of Resistance chronologically comes before, you couldn't really just jump into that without first opening the world up with the original Dark Crystal.
Yeah. Well, also, I think the cool thing about Age of Resistance, I don't know why I can't say that today, Age of Resistance, is that I think there have been a lot of people who discovered it and who didn't even know there was an original movie. So it's not that you can't enjoy it at all if you haven't seen the movie. And it kind of ties back to what I was saying before about how here's this whole entire world and the movie is just one thing that happened in the world. Age of Resistance is another thing that happened in that world, and it in itself is its own story that you can dive into and become immersed in. And should you choose to open that door off in the hallway and go see the movie originally, it's like, oh, okay, that gives it more context, that adds to the experience. But if you didn't go in that room, you could have still enjoyed your time in this room. And I love that. I love that you don't need a prerequisite necessarily. It's like it enhances it if you do. Should you decide to explore the whole house, it definitely makes the experience better. But if you don't, you're not going to like be excluded or alienated from the experience. You're still going to have a good time.
I'm trying to avoid irritating certain people in the chat by going down yes, we need less interconnected things.
Have you gone on that rant a lot before? Because
I'm kind of known for it. I have a lot of friends who are
who are
enormous MCU fans who don't see eye to eye with me. So
I'm gonna withhold my opinions. I'm gonna say I feel you. I respect you, and I respect everybody. Listen, those angry MCU fanboys in there, I hear you too. It's cool. You do you. No hate your way, but kind of get what you're saying. I kind of understand. I kind of agree. I'm kind of over it. So that's another episode for another 2 hours easily. So
Yeah, but we're not going to go down that road. We're going to stay very focused on
we're good.
On this. I'm just going to jump around in this because I have a bad tendency of wanting to go down a chronological road with discussions.
Yeah.
But let's just have
open a door.
Like, who do you guys like character-wise? Who do you have the most fun with in this film?
Bill?
So I mean, I'll probably go with Jen. He was just, again, I mean, I probably mentioned earlier, but being a character who I connected with because he was always on his own, this whole world, for him to explore. But also, like growing up, I used to struggle, like, had autism with, pervasive developmental disorder, but so I used to go see a speech therapist a lot. And so like learning films or learning, to talk, through films at some point. And Jen was just one of those characters because he spoke in a very simple English language. I think that's sort of how I really connected to Jen from that perspective. That's just one of the most heartbreaking scenes. I mean, towards the end, this is the part where they're so sort of giving him the exposition of, where to get this crystal and, and all the things that happen, is just very sad.
We'll meet again in this life. We'll meet again in another life, but not again in this one.
Not again in this one. Yeah, definitely.
A lot of hard-hitting sadness very early in the movie. It's
totally.
Rough.
Yeah.
But then he fades away in glitter, and it's just like, what a beautiful way to portray death.
I have to say, especially watching this movie in 4K, I was struck by the beauty of just the whole like visual design. The colors are like there's this subtle brilliance to the colors that even in a scene that where the costumes and the set design are kind of toned down. There's just these wonderful subtleties in the colors that really make it shine almost. And especially once you get into the crystal chamber, like everything's bathed in the purple light of the crystal. And I was watching it just like, oh my God, this is gorgeous.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it definitely inspired a lot of the interior design trends of people our age now, and they don't even realize it, because like when you look at half of the Twitch streamers out there, like they all have that purple like LED backlighting and like the purple and pink and like, dude, I love it. I'm all about that. I've been doing that my whole life, and it's 100% because we want that crystal. Like we want the essence. Like, and even people who think, look at it, oh yeah, heck yeah. Like, and when you think about it, that purple color it's the darkening, and it's only that color because it's messed up, it's corrupted, it's not supposed to be that color, and yet we all cannot help but be compelled to stare at it like the Skeksis do and be like, oh, give me your power, I just want to decorate my room all purple because look at you, so pretty. And, so totally agree. Yeah, I love it.
And it was so beautiful, but so dark. Now my mind is just going to Age of Resistance and Deet being corrupted by the darkening, and at the end, which, by the way, my mention of Deet now gives me the opportunity to go ahead and bring this out, which I very recently got. And I'm waiting on Hup, because he's like,
they really are. No, whatever, they've really done a pretty darn fine good job with these collectibles with Age of Resistance, and Dark Crystal too. So
I'll be getting I have ordered Kira, obviously.
Nice.
I should have her when she's released, which I think they said January they're gonna start shipping her out.
Definitely early next year.
Cannot wait to have her on my shelf. Like, God, there has been just a criminal shortage of proper Dark Crystal merchandise, like notoriously, and to be able to have beautiful shelf pieces that Weta has created, like, it's a little expensive. It's pretty expensive, but
Sydnni, Cassie is saying here that she still hasn't seen the series, so I'd like you to give her the exact same speech you were giving me about reading the book.
Oh yeah, okay, all right, Cassie, right? Put on my grandpa glasses here, and Cassie. Okay, here's the thing. Look at me in the eyes right now. Look at me. Here we go. Turn on Netflix. If you've canceled Netflix by now, I don't blame you. I get it. They've made a lot of questionable choices, but get Netflix back just for the sake of watching Age of Resistance. Turn it on. We need more people to watch it anyway, because if Netflix sees those numbers and sees that people are still watching it, who knows what could happen. They need to see that it wasn't a failure and that it's still relevant. And also, you'll love it. It's awesome. So turn on Netflix, you go to Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, you watch it, and then 10 hours later, you find me on Facebook or on Instagram or wherever, and you message you, Sydnni, I watched it, you were right, I love you, you're my best friend now. And I'll be like, I know, you're welcome. That's what's gonna happen. I just read your future for free. You're welcome.
Yep. So and then you can always go through our back catalogue of shows with Trial by Stone.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Good. I didn't even think to plug us. Absolutely. Go listen to us. Absolutely. Then go listen to our show, because after spending that 10 hours watching Age of Resistance, and this is not, I'm not BSing you in the slightest, because I did this. I binged it 10 hours and it changed my life. It was amazing. And my fiance was not really a big Dark Crystal fan beforehand, and he got so sucked into Age of Resistance. Episode 1, he was like, wow, I love this, let's keep watching this. He had no intentions of watching all 10 hours with me, and then he did, and then he asked to watch the movie after, and I was like, I've done my job. Doing the Lord's work. Lord Agra. So watch it, Cassie. All that to say, definitely watch it. This is me being firm but loving and supportive. Watch it. It's very crucial, very important. Yeah.
So now I want to pose the question to you, Sydnni. Who's your favorite character from the film?
Oh, it's Kira. 100% Kira. I think that should be fairly obvious to anyone who's been listening to me ramble on, I have no doubt that there's an ongoing like drinking game of some sort for listeners of the podcast to take a shot every time Sid mentions her cat named Kira. And it's not that I favor my cat named Kira above my other cat named Lilu after The Fifth Element. They're both my children and I love them. But Kira, the minute I saw her little face, and when she was a baby, and even my mom was like, she looks like a little Henson puppet. She doesn't look real. And I was like, she's Kira. I got my Kira. Because there's something about the character Kira and my cat Kira. The eyes, when they look at you and you're just like, oh, I must protect you with my life. It's the same sort of quality that Deet has in Age of Resistance, where the minute you meet her and you look into Deet's eyes, you're like, I can't let anything happen to you, you precious little cinnamon roll. I love you so much. But the fact that Kira's like, she's got the ability to communicate with all the animals, that's always been something that, you know, super close to me. I love animals more than people. I have no shame about that. And her song, my favorite moment in the entire movie, unquestionably, without hesitation, is when they're on the boat and Kira is singing and Jen's playing his furka. That song brings me inner peace when I am freaking out at my most insane. Like,
and I just love like Fizz. I just love like Fizzgeek, just like, you know, in that scene as well. Like, just he just seems like a bit bored, you know, in that bar, like, sort of thing.
But is he spazzing out? Is he yelling? No, he's chill.
He's calm and collective.
Because Kira's voice is just, there's something about that. And the voice acting is spectacular. She just brings such an innocence. Like, she's innocent without sounding naive. It's an interesting line to walk. Like, typically when a character, when they go the innocent route with a character, there's also like an element of like naivety or like being kind of dumb and clueless. Kira's like, she's an expert. She knows more about the world than Jen does, like by far. She's taking him by the hand and guiding him, and he's the clueless one. He's the hero, and he's totally clueless. And Kira knows what's up, and she's like, "Oh, okay. Wait, you don't even know what dream fasting is? Like, this is kind of a thing that's crucial to our species, but okay, I guess I'll tell you what that is."
I will say, when I was watching it today, it was like, and I apologize, Phil, because I know your favorite character is Jen, but it does kind of feel like when Kira shows up, it's like, okay, things are okay now.
Things will get better from here. Yeah, no, because I mean, if Jen was on his own, you know, during that quest, I don't think he would have gotten that far.
He'd have walked right off that cliff.
But probably, and that's what I loved about, like, you know, always having one another to sort of, you know, get through the journey. You know, it's very, you know, it's like, you know, you got the Mystics and the Skeksis, and I mean, Jen and Kira, you know, just the pairing of sorts. So yeah.
They bring out the best in each other. He's the best version of himself when he finds her, and they're part of each other. That ends up being the whole thing at the end when the Urskek tells them she's a part of you as we're all part of each other. So they're sort of this representation of just what a healthy relationship is supposed to be, where you recognize that you're part of each other and you bring out the best in one another and you complement each other. And even though Kira's kind of more awesome in every way, but that doesn't mean but you know, the movie needs to have Jen, though. If Jen was not there, the epicness of Kira would not be as thoroughly illustrated, because she learns a lot from him also. She's inspired by him, and she's motivated by him, and she knows that he's got to be the guy. And I think she respects the things that he knows. Like when he teaches her about words this day, you know, they have this nice balance of, you know, Kira knows a little bit more about their history, which I've always wondered about, by the way. Side note, why does Kira know so much about Gelfling history when she was raised by the podlings? Were the little potato guys were teaching her about, like, how? That's the backstory we need. We got to open that door now. Like, why does Kira know so much? But anyway,
which by the way, I have to say, like, the podlings were a part of the original film that for a while I wasn't super enthusiastic about. I'm sorry, I know, but
everybody loves potatoes. What's wrong with you?
I know, but then Age of Resistance came along and introduced me to this guy, and I was like, oh my god, I love podlings.
So wait, you mean to tell me that the scene in the Podling Tavern in the original movie with that music, which I'm sorry, it slaps harder than anything ever, and you weren't just like jamming and wanting to go party with the tater people? Like, excuse me? No, I don't believe you. I think you're just trying to be edgy. There's no way. I don't believe you.
Okay. You could be right.
When you watched it today, the most recent time you watched the movie, when it got to that scene, you didn't like jam a little bit at the podcast?
No, I was enjoying it today, definitely.
All right, that's all I needed. We're fine. We're cool again. That's all I needed.
Yeah, it's really interesting about that scene. It's like it's probably like the most sort of, that scene is like the most Muppety scene, like, of all the Dark Crystal, but everything else, yeah.
Well, they were originally going to be Fraggles. When they were creating the Podlings, they were referring to them as Fraggles in early production, and then that he ended up using that for the Fraggles, and so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
They're very similar. And that's.
I would have loved to see and imagine. It would have been so interesting though if the Fraggles were Podlings, Podling Rock.
Yeah. That's a crossover that I there's no reason why that can't happen.
I know.
Except I guess it's established that the Fraggles live underneath the human world, and there's no humans in Thra. So never mind.
In Thra, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Scrap that idea.
Nope. I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work as well as I imagine it. Yeah.
Just too enthused.
All right, I'm gonna take this moment to pause. We're gonna do a mid-roll, which basically just be me teasing what's coming up, and you guys can let folks know, where they can find you on various social media. Next week, I'm going to be joined by our good friend Lady Triple, aka Christina, who is going to be talking with me about Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. We're going to be continuing our Pirates journey. You guys don't know about this yet, but it's inevitable that you will find out that I have a crush that I'm not shy about sharing for Miss Keira Knightley. So I very often cover Keira Knightley films.
Bold of you to assume I don't know about the Knights of Keira already.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Jeez.
Wow.
I actually research the people I collaborate with.
Well, there you go. The cat's already out of the bag. So Christine and I will be covering the Keira Knightley film Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. And and then the week after that, I'll be having the Blue Lemons will be on talking about the Green Knight with me. I wanted to have Micah join us, but unfortunately he's going to be working. So
working. Ew.
Yeah, so that's not going to happen. But we're still going to have a really fun time. So and just so you guys know, I am back every week now. I know I was kind of alternating for a while, but for the foreseeable future, you guys will have me back each Saturday. So so what do you guys have coming up on the channel? On not the channel, the podcast.
Yeah, well, I guess we could probably talk about this because it's already been announced. Of course, this we got this. We're collaborating with ThamesCon, who are the people Zay behind the Great Conjunction, and we're planning to do like a Halloween themed Dark Crystal online event called Thralloween.
Thralloween.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a big virtual marketplace for artists to come and trade and sell and show off their Dark Crystal fan art, as well as we're gonna have lots of special guests and announcements and premiering little previews of our collaboration with Riverhorse for the Dark Crystal RPG, the adventure game.
That is so awesome.
Yeah, we collaborated with Riverhorse to create a little scene for the Dark Crystal adventure game, which is just mind-blowing. Phil and I are just absolutely off our rockers with excitement because it's like, this is an official Jim Henson licensed product and our names are on it.
Names are on it.
Excuse me, I can die now. So we're gonna do a nice little preview of that at Thralloween with some panels with special guests, and so if you want to get involved with that, we posted about it on our Trial by Stone social media, as well as you can follow the Great Conjunction on Facebook. That was, for those of you who don't know, it was a Dark Crystal convention that happened at the beginning of 2020 before the Darkening. Before. And so that's coming up. You can follow us on Facebook at Trial by Stone. You can go to darkcrystalpodcast.com and see all our updates.
Just so you guys know, Stephen is an enormous D&D fan and player, and so right now he's like, because I was involved in a game with him and lots of other of our friends. Work got in the way. So I wasn't able to stick with it, but now he's plotting how he can use this information to suck me back in.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm a massive D&D fanatic myself. I love it. And that's part of why I can't believe I'm like a Dark Crystal RPG. Like, the fact that it's happening is already awesome enough, but like to be involved with it is just like, all of my loves are combining. Next thing you're gonna tell me is that like Tim Burton's part of it. My head would explode.
Nightmare Before Christmas RPG. But I mean, with the podcast, if you just darkcrystalpodcast.com, that's sort of the main site. But social medias, if you just search Dark Crystal Podcast, you'll tend to find us on
Instagram, as well.
Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Those are the three that we're on social media. Check them out.
I have the website address and the Twitter link in the description, so you guys can find that.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, okay, so let's jump back in. If we're talking about favorite characters, I mean, there's no way that I can't, like, just say the Chamberlain, you know, for the film, like, and even more now that I've seen the show. Like, because Simon Pegg's performance on Age of Resistance was just amazing, but it adds so much, even more to the film now, because you watch Chamberlain and you know, like, the depths of his manipulations and all that, and he's just so fun to watch, and especially, like, you know, when he approaches Jen and Kieran, he's like, "No, me friend," you know, it's like, no, don't listen to him.
Friend. Please.
Please make peace.
Please make peace. Please. The frantic. I mean, he's definitely nightmare fuel for so many kids our age. But he's also hilarious at the same time. Like, he's just an amazing character. So that's not he's a lot of people's favorites, and he's awesome. You love to hate him, and he's a little bit disgusting, as all the Skeksis are, and that the scene when he gets banished and stripped and he's just like howling,
that's so disturbing.
Immensely
traumatic.
Very traumatic. That's the scene that I think most kids are like, I was out at that point. That was it for me.
It's like I was thinking about the meme, like, you know, you take a picture of like the Gelfling or the Mystics and put that up, and, you know, put underneath it your favorite movie, and then the picture next to it is Chamberlain getting all his robes ripped off and stuff, and then underneath it says the scene when your parents walk in, because it's just so weird. And
what are you watching? Totally. Fortunately, you know, as I've mentioned before, my mom was privy to all of that. She was ready. But there were definitely times when if I was watching my favorite movies and I had other relatives come over and be like, your child is 5. Why is she watching this? And my mom would be like, she's fine. Don't worry about it. She loves it. I promise. Like, so yeah, that's definitely one of those scenes. The screeching, it just like, it haunts you. It kind of sticks in your brain for a while after the first couple times you've seen it. And Simon Pegg did such a good job of recreating it. And how did you, I was just gonna say, like, I was gonna ask you, since it was your favorite character, did you feel like Simon Pegg like brought the same energy to it, like he did the character justice compared to the movie?
Yeah, if this was a full-on discussion of Age of Resistance, I would be just going on and on and on about Simon Pegg, because you know, and which not just Simon Pegg, but also the, you know, on all the puppeteers and everything,
and voice
because
actors.
it's such a remarkable job. One of the sort of most chilling parts for me of the series is in the very first episode, that ending monologue that Chamberlain gives.
Iconic.
It's so, and because you think you know how the series is going to end because of what has happened in the film. So when you're listening to that, it's just so foreboding and disturbing and tragic. So
he's so evil, and he really illustrates like how a lot of the time the best villains are not the ones who come out all blah ha ha, I will destroy the world, I am bad guy. Cough Thanos. But a lot of the time what makes just a truly believable villain and terrifying villain is the ability to just get under your skin and manipulate, and you kind of almost for a second think like, well, hold on, he might be onto something, or he's a little bit charming, he's a little bit amusing, I want to keep watching him. That's like, they can really, those are the ones who can do some damage. And his entire character of like the sleazy politician who plants the seeds of misinformation and of lies and gets everybody so distracted trying to kill each other that they don't pay attention to what he's doing, that's evil.
And the and the timing of that when the series came out, you know, the misinformation and you know, and all that, it was just, I was watching, was like, oh my god, this is like so on point. And
wait a minute, is this a fantasy though? Is it? Well,
and I think they even mentioned that in the documentary, The Crystal Calls, where because it's in a fantasy setting, it allows them to really explore the stuff that you know, is crucial that people sort of think about. And it's, that show is so timely with all that. It's incredible.
Right in time for us to have our own darkening. It's that's another reason, Cassie, if you're still out there, watch the show, because it's, you know, very relevant and probably, you know, gave us a lot of like catharsis and like, yes, okay, some people get it. So yeah, it's great. It's just, it's very important that more people watch it. And I know we're talking about the movie, but the show is very, very well timed. And but to cycle back, like,
Stephen is such a huge Mark Hamill fan, as many of us are.
Yes.
And again, like, I'll veer this back over to the movie. I swear I will. But just his performance as the scientist,
amazing.
Like, because I think that was the vocal performance that really took a character to a whole nother level.
Because it was kind of a really different voice than what he had in the movie, but you could still, like, you could see what Mark Hamill did eventually becoming what we got in the movie. Like, you could see over time that voice evolving into the one in the movie. So they're not identical in the way that the Chamberlain is. The Chamberlain is just like seamless. Like
pretty consistent.
Simon Pegg did, like, he imitated so well but a little bit more youthful, but just a little bit.
I love the scientist's line.
Yeah.
I am incontrovertibly the most abused creature in all of Thra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that back when they were making announcements about Age of Resistance, before we knew a whole lot about it, when they first announced the cast list, they just told us who the cast was, but they didn't tell us who was playing who. They just said, here are the actors who are in it. And we saw that Mark Hamill was going to be a Skeksis.
We have the Dark Crystal Conjunction joining us in the
chat.
Yes. Jason.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yay. Yeah, but what I was going to say was that because we didn't know at first who was what voice was assigned to which character, the majority of the fan base assumed Mark Hamill was going to be the Chamberlain. And there was a lot of theorizing, who's going to play who? A lot of people thought Helena Bonham Carter was going to be the voice of Agra for 5 seconds there. There was and I remember being convinced. I was so sure that Mark Hamill was going to be the Chamberlain, because I could just hear it in my head, him okay, because that's the voice we think of. When we think of the Skeksis voices, the one that sticks out in our head the most is the Chamberlain. And Mark Hamill's the most renowned voice actor of that cast list, I would say. And so it was a big surprise when it turned out that he was going to be the scientist. And I remember myself at least going, okay, that's weird.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Well, I didn't see that coming. And I'm sure it'll be good, but So, but then, he knocked it out of the park. I think my camera just went out.
Yeah.
Forgive me. Hold on. I'm going to switch it. Don't worry about it. You guys keep talking. I'm not going anywhere.
But, but now I can't imagine it any other way, because was such a fantastic scientist. And Simon Pegg nailed the Chamberlain. And who's the voice, Donna Kimball as Agra.
Oh yeah, Donna Kimball as Agra. Yeah, she nailed it. Yeah.
Talk about that's seamless. She was utterly fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's such a cool person too, by the way. Donna Kimball. I'm gonna tout our cred a little bit. We know her, but Donna is she's a badass. If you get a chance to talk to her, highly recommend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So veering back over to the film, Sydnni, you were talking earlier about Thra's song, and people will be wondering why it took me so long to come around to the music, because I love to talk about the original scores, but the music by Trevor Jones. And I love I am a huge fan of the music of Age of Resistance, but I think what the film has, it's there's a romanticism about the music that is just so beautiful, and especially Thra's theme when she comes on, and
the love theme is so good.
Yeah,
it's just absolutely gorgeous. And there's this wonderful YouTube channel, I'm trying to remember the name of it, where this guy basically takes, clips from films and then sets it to the main themes, from various movies or songs. And he's got this really beautiful one for the Dark Crystal, and it just makes you appreciate the beauty of that main theme. And because when the opening Universal logo comes on, it's it really hits you with it. And so when you get to Age of Resistance and they use that theme over the title, it just brings in the chills.
Yes, I'll tell you.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, the music is one of. I'm a massive film score nerd. Big shocker, I'm sure. Typically, my Lord and Savior is Danny Elfman, but Trevor Jones is right up there with them. Jerry Goldsmith also. And what Trevor has done, I feel like it's very quintessentially 80s on the one hand in his instrumentation. Same sort of deal with Labyrinth, where you can detect that this was an 80s fantasy movie, and I'm not mad at that. I love that. No. Because of the way that the synthesizers are used, it's very like, okay, this is definitely 1982. But he brings in so many like medieval elements to the score as well, like very Renaissance-y. Particularly in the way he uses the strings. And then when I mentioned before the scene with the Mystics, when we're in the Valley of the Mystics and he's playing the harp, and that's just, it's gorgeous. There's something about that song. It's magical. It takes you, he walks that line between this is an 80s movie and this is a fantasy movie so well. It's just 80s enough to be fun, but not so much that you're like unable to suspend your disbelief. You're definitely still not in reality. You're that the music is still just fantastical enough to just completely sweep you away and take you away. And Kira's song is I love that song so much, and I'm also a vocal coach in my my day job, and I'm
being made fun of here.
Why? Careful of your boy John. He cares nothing about film scores. Oh, okay. Is that true?
No, it's the exact opposite.
Oh, okay. Sarcasm. I like it. Yeah, I often use Kira's song as sort of a part of my vocal drills and my vocal warm-ups. And like just the other day I was on a little hike in Yosemite and I was chilling on a rock in the middle of the creek and I was literally just singing that song out into the trees because it's just the first thing that pops into my mind of like, I'm in the forest and I'm going to sing something mystical. Kira's song. First thing that pops into my head. Just so good. So good.
Yeah, I even before I watched the movie again today, I was listening to the soundtrack yesterday, and as soon as Kira's song came on, it instantly like stuck out because partly because there's like, even on the soundtrack they've got some of the ambience of the sounds, the sort of nature sounds, along with it, but it's just so beautiful. And yeah, there is an 80s quality too, but it's also very traditionally orchestral, a lot of it, which for me, I just love. You'll a lot of people in the chat are like, oh God, here he goes. But like, I very much love when film scores lean into the traditional orchestral mode, just because it feels so epic and big. But yeah, no, I've always loved the score. Like even when I wasn't like firmly like in the camp of loving the movie, more of taking a stance of I really admire the craft. But the music was always like I always had this soundtrack, in my library, and it's gorgeous.
If you can get it on vinyl and listen to it on a record player, highly recommend. Highly recommend. I also think plus orchestral is timeless. Yeah, absolutely. And
big time.
And especially when you compare it to, like I did mention, like the score has enough of the instrumentation to remind you that it's the 80s, but not in comparison to like the Labyrinth score, for example. Like you listen to the score from the Labyrinth and you're like, that is the 80s 100%. Like the synthesized bass of burner, like it's very, very 80s-y. And so it's just a really good testament to Trevor Jones's range that you have something that's very, very clearly 1985, and then something that has a little bit of 1982 in it, but is still this like orchestral fairy tale fantasy just explosion, with just a little flavor of 1982 in there. Just nothing like it. It's so good. Get it on vinyl. Look you in the eyes again. Get it on vinyl.
Leaf is asking this, so I have to bring it up. I have no choice. I did an interview last year with a fellow named Doug Adams, not that Doug Adams, but Doug Adams, who wrote the book, The Music of the Lord of the Rings films, and who works a lot with Howard Shore, and that was just one of the biggest pleasures of my life, because we talked for about 3 hours about just all the themes and stuff. So if anybody watches this who hasn't seen that interview, please check it out, because it was just one of the biggest treats of my life. But yeah,
that's awesome.
That's sweet. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to check it out.
So yeah. So jumping off
we got. I was gonna say.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go. Stop. No, you stop me. You go. This is your show, man. Go.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking we talked about Chamberlain and the Skeksis, and by the way, like the Skeksis are like gruesome all throughout this. The scene where they're eating, in the dining hall is
yes, the banquet. Yes.
Oh God. And they leaned into
spaghetti.
Yeah, they leaned into that with the TV show too. They didn't veer away from that. But
I love that was like one of Jim's favorite scenes to film in the Dark Crystal, that banquet scene. Just being able to have just a lot of fun with that scene, and
the wind up toys.
The wind-up toys or the crawlies,
yeah. And I think, was it Louise Gold who was telling us? I think it was Louise Gold who was telling us about how they just like left the food out after like the first day of shooting, and so when they came back to continue, it was all like so smelly and like actually rotting, and so to a certain point filming that scene was actually as disgusting as it looked, because it was like rotten, stinky old spaghetti, and like moldy water, like So yeah, when I got that context, I was like, okay, all right, that's I don't have to suspend my disbelief.
When I watch that scene and I see that pasta just hanging out, I'm like, no, just put it in your mouth. Just get it over with.
Yeah.
Palms
are sweaty. Mom's spaghetti. No.
But no,
iconic.
A character that we haven't talked much about, except I mentioned the voice on Age of Resistance, but Aughra is just it's so amazing, because she's kind of operating as an almost Gandalf like figure, probably more so in Age of Resistance, but even in this, but she's so atypical of what you would expect, and it's so brilliant the way that's executed.
So I mean, because she is a little bit Gandalf, but she's also kind of a little bit Radagast, like a little bit sloppy, a little bit like like Jen's reaction of like, is this person actually who I came all this way to see, or are they a little bit cuckoo?
And especially in the novelization, in that scene where you meet her, you're actually kind of unsure about, she almost seems like, is she trustworthy? Is she not? And
what side she's on?
Because she's a little scary too. That when you first meet her, and Phil and I talked a little bit about this, a lot about this for recently, because one of the segments that we do on our podcast is the Dark Crystal Minute, where we literally examine the film minute by minute, and we take 1 minute of the movie and we just like nerd out about that 1 minute and like deconstruct it. And the most recent episode that we talked about is the moment that we meet Aughra. And so that in that moment that we meet Aughra, she is like, if you've never seen the movie before, the first time you see it, she's one of the like more scary puppets, because she's wow. She's loud, she's aggressive, she's boisterous, and she's got the funky eye, she's fugly, she's got like the whole like she's got that big like waddly butt, like it's great. She's such a great puppet, but like for a child, that's one of the sort of more nightmare fuel moments, potentially, depending on what kind of kid you were. And the way she's like so aggressive and boisterous in her who are you? Look at Gelfling, smell like Gelfling, think I'm going to eat you. Like it's very like, yes, maybe you are gonna eat me. Like And she's got devil horns, like, well, they're not devil horns, they're more like tiefling horns, for my D&D friends out there. Little demonic. And man, the like mustache vibes. I mean, she owns it though, like to a certain extent. And Frank Oz really was in love with this puppet, and he talks about in like the behind the scenes featurettes and stuff about like what a gorgeous, beautiful puppet she is. And to a child watching that featurette, you're like, what are you talking about? She's hideous. But as you grow up and you become like, you know, nerdy about puppets, and you recognize like, oh, she is gorgeous, because like you can see how difficult it must have been to craft that face. Like she's so detailed, every little crevasse of her face, and the eyeball, and the horns, and the hair, the fact that somebody had to punch in every one of those hairs specifically where they are. She's just one of the most artistically complex puppets, and yeah, she's beautiful.
Yeah, I was going on about how I was scared by the Skeksis as a kid. Like, I didn't even go on about the terror I'm sure I probably felt about Augur as a little kid. Because it's like, we expect the villains to be, you know, ugly, but it's like this is supposed to be one of our...
This is like the Jesus figure of the story. And this is our Aslan, and she's horrifying, and she pulled her literal eyeball out of her skull. Like, wait a minute. I think that was the moment I became a little goth. Like, that was what started it all. I was like, oh, okay. I like this eyeball demon lady. She scares me, and I kind of want to believe everything she tells me. So, Augra's iconic. She's a legend in her own right. She's a deity. She's a literal goddess. She's #goals. What else?
I mean, there's no helping it with a lot of these characters, and it's just impossible to not talk about them across both the film and the series. But just, you know, in episode 5 of Age of Resistance, when you know she's, you know, dancing around and you know, and then getting in tune with Thra and bringing all of our heroes together, it's
cool to see that side of her.
It's so good.
And when we meet her in the movie, she's crotchety. She's seen it all. She's jaded. She's bitter. She's a little cuckoo, a little more than she was in Age of Resistance, because she's traumatized. Really, this is PTSD Augra, the version of her we see in the movie, and she's questioning, like, is this actually Gelfling? Can't be Gelfling. Gartham killed them all, and she's like traumatized by the fact that she witnessed a literal genocide and tried to stop it. And we get more context for that in Age of Resistance. We see her a little bit grappling with the guilt and facing the guilt of, oh, I contributed to this because I trusted these guys, and I left the world to go and explore the stars, and I thought I was helping, but look at all this chaos that happened while I was gone. And so that whole event, the fact that we see her fight so hard in Age of Resistance to help the Gelfling and ultimately not really succeed, at least as we know it in the film, she has essentially failed her mission.
It's what's so heartbreaking, the fact that the end of Age of Resistance as it stands right now ends on, you know, not entirely uplifting, but predominantly uplifting. But we know what comes and what the missing chapter is, and it's really sad to see her in that state, you know. She's I guess a little more Yoda than Gandalf in that sense, because I mean it's kind of easy to make the Yoda comparison because the whole like, hey, you bounced when everyone needed you, and you realized that what you did was actually maybe not the right choice, and you abandoned your cause, and now you've been isolated and left to go a little wonky, stewing in your guilt. And that's kind of where we meet Yoda in Empire, and very similar vibes. So appropriate that they both had Wendy Froud as a designer for the puppet, because they have a very similar
don't say essence, spirit. They have been.
Yeah, and both were performed by Frank Oz to add to that.
In such close proximity to Empire, which came out in 1980, and this was 1982.
Yeah, and honestly, I kind of love, I don't know if you guys, I know Philip has, but John, I don't know if you've seen the behind the scenes featurette where they show Frank Oz puppeteering Agra, and he's doing her voice. And obviously for the film, we don't get Frank Oz's version of the voice. We get that we don't have Frank's voice as Agra. But I kind of loved watching that version, because it's sort of like it's a little bit Yoda, but also like an angry Miss Piggy. It's like an extra angry, like really salty, crazy Miss Piggy voice. And I kind of adore that a little bit. So I wish that we could get more. I wish we could have an Oz cut of the film, release the Oz cut, where it's all Frank Oz's performance as Agra for the whole movie, because I would love to see that.
I think that would have also added to. I remember when I was a kid, I think when I was first watching the movie that I didn't entirely know whether Agra was supposed to be male or female. And I think that would have added to it if it was Frank Oz's voice. We need that cut, and we need the cut with the Skeksis original.
The Washington DC preview cut.
Everyone was like, what's going on? Speak English. I love that too, though, because I kind of like that idea of like, hey, audience, figure it out. Use your eyes.
Because I've watched like a rough assembly cut version of the movie that was online, where it takes like a lot of cut moments and restores that original the dialogue and all that, and it really works, but whether it would work for a wide audience is another question. But I loved it, because it's very much like, no, just use context to figure out what's going on.
And kind of, I mean, I'm gonna get a little spicy here, but I do feel like nowadays audiences kind of have lost the ability to shape context out of visual cues, and like just kind of put things together with context clues, because things are written very much in a hand it all to you, show it all to you directly, or like I call the Shyamalan, where at the end he goes back and replays all the things for you just in case you missed it. Here's all of it again. Like, I saw it the first time, M. Night, thank you, I'm not an idiot, but that's I feel like I like the idea of a cut of this movie where it's even more confusing for audiences who are forced to piece together, based on a purely visual experience, what's going on. So, yay! Thank you. I just thought for a second, whoever that was, Blue Lemons. Hey, I like you. I like your style.
It's kind of, for me, it's the season 1 of Game of Thrones syndrome, where it's like, let's make sure that we really lay on thick all the information that the audience needs to know, with no subtlety whatsoever.
Did you catch it when this happened? Let's zoom in on it one more time.
It's like there's a couple moments in season 1 of that show where it's like, that's the Queen's twin brother. And it's almost like, did you get that? Let's say it
just
again.
In case. Let's say it again.
And it's... And I tire. But apparently that's the thing. Some people still had trouble following that stuff. So it's like today's audiences, unfortunately, I guess, really need that, because they're not.
And again, I sound like cranky old grandpa again, being like, in my day, we knew how to read context clues. But like, the fact that our media does kind of shape and evolve the way that audiences consume media, just in the same sense that now we have a streaming based entertainment system. People are used to instant gratification, being able to complete the story right now, where we have the modern audience has been shaped for binging. Similarly, I think it's happened where the audience has been shaped for kind of having everything handed to them immediately. It kind of goes hand in hand with the same sort of binge mentality. We're used to getting our answers immediately, hit the play next episode button, or not even have to hit the play next episode button. It just automatically does. So now it's shaped that same, like, we as an audience are kind of losing the ability to be patient and figure it out. It's not that the audience, Dark Crystal Conjunction, don't assume the audience is dumb. Yeah, it's not necessarily that the audience is dumb. It's just, it's a cultural, the way that we consume media now is just kind of shaping that. So, and I think that was beginning to take shape probably in the 80s when the audiences weren't responding to just having visual context clues of the Skeksis not speaking English. It was already taking that turn. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just kind of an observation of the way that our culture consumes media differently as the decades go by.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and actually, like, I was really surprised, even with Age of Resistance, that, you know how some shows that they always start off with, like, previously on such and such show. We didn't get that in Age of Resistance. I was really surprised because I remember, like, watching every episode. I'm like, so much goes on in each episode. There'd be times it's like, oh, maybe would have liked to recap, but at the same time, it was probably for the better because sometimes with recaps, they actually, like, recap of a certain character that you haven't seen that's going to appear in the episode that sort of almost like semi spoils about, oh, okay, well, we know this character is going to be in this episode. So
well, giving a recap before an episode, that's always going to be a smart choice because most of the time now with streaming content we have the option to skip the recap if we just saw it.
Exactly.
So it's up to you. But also because sometimes some of us have to stop watching for the night and go live our lives and remember to eat and say hi to our families and then come back to finish watching the next episode the next day. And we're like, okay, where was I? So I do agree that's a smart choice, but there's a difference between having that option that's cleverly edited and, specifically for that situation, compared to having it built into the writing where it's like, we're going to constantly recap for you every other scene because we assume you're dumb and you don't remember it. There's a line to walk there.
Definitely.
There's definitely a line.
One of my favorite things when I was watching Age of Resistance, which I didn't know at the time that this was because certain material had been covered in the YA books. Yeah. But there are certain sort of, you could call them narrative gaps. I don't want to, but things that happen sort of off screen that we don't see because we're following a certain set of characters. Yeah. Like when we're following, Rian and the carriage and, with Chamberlain, and then all of a sudden, we see, why is my mind drawing a blank?
Naya and Gurjin?
Yeah, and Gurjin has been rescued by Naya, and the fact that we didn't explicitly see that on screen. Now, from what I understand, that's material covered in the books. But for someone who didn't know that, I was really pleasantly surprised because it was like, they're trusting the audience to catch up on that and not have to have every single beat explained to us.
It goes back to the walking down the hallway and choosing to open that door if you want. We walk down the hallway and we only get the information that's relevant to that specific plot line and that specific plot point. Should we decide to think, oh, I'm actually interested in seeing that story of how Gurjin was rescued, I can open this door and go check out that room, and that's the J.M. Lee novels, which are literally all about Naya and everything she does that we don't see. So it's that same form of storytelling of you have the option to go off into the separate rooms, but it's not a requirement, it's not a prerequisite. It doesn't have to be built into the writing that we explain everything necessarily, because it's not always going to be relevant. It's just supplemental. I love it. I end every rant with I love it because I love it. I'm Linda Belcher. I love it.
I want to welcome Micah to the chat. He
Hi.
He had stuff going on tonight, but I'm very happy to see him here. I'm just bummed, Mike. I was letting everybody know that you're not going to be able to make it to the Green Knight discussion, which I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, Micah. I'm just gutted. That's all.
You have a life to live, and that's just really upsetting, basically.
Yeah.
Why do you have to work and make money? God.
Exactly. But yeah, so that was one of the things that really made me excited, because you see so little of that. Everything needs to be over-explained in today's media most of the time, and it's, and we look at Dark Crystal, the movie, like, you could say the opening kind of really explains stuff, because it's setting, but throughout the film it doesn't do that. It's you're left to interpret things kind of on your own, and
you're seeing the story through Jen's eyes, and Jen is clueless to the world around him, so the audience is experiencing, learning about these things as Jen learns about them. So it wouldn't make sense if we had all the context, because Jen is a big doofus. Like, deliberately, he's a lovable doofus. That's why he's our protagonist. But he has to be a little bit of a doofus, because otherwise it'd be like, why do we know all this already? We have to learn it and see it through his eyes and make those discoveries. And then Kira is the one who's like, oh, I got this. I know what's going on. I know what's up. So it's a brilliant form of storytelling. And sometimes simplicity is the most effective way to get the point across. I feel like we've kind of lost a love for simplicity nowadays in our media, and I miss simplicity, because it can be a beautiful thing.
Which is something I'm going to touch on when I do my stream about the Green Knight, because that is a very simple story as far as like the bones of the story. What's going on like underneath the surface.
The subtext is so not simple, though.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
Oh God, it's gonna be so great. But
when I went to see that movie, everyone else was like, "What is going on?" And I was like, "Shh, pay attention."
Oh my. Okay, yeah. Sidebar. Came to the end of the movie, like the last 10 minutes. This old couple was behind me, and the old guy goes, "I want a refund." And then it got to the very last shot of the movie, credits roll, and he says, "Okay, now I really want a refund." And I was like, "Oh, shut up."
Yeah, hey, whatever. To tell the old guy, like, you're just a dang millennial. Get off my lawn.
Exactly. So we're in our last 10 minutes here. I want to touch on just a couple of other things as far as, like, talking more about scary creatures, the Gartham.
Clickety clack, clickety clack, clickety clack.
Oh my God. I mean, there's so much in this movie that just, I'm sure, terrified me as a kid, but it's so brilliant. Like, and the fact that the Gartham are essentially empty shells.
Yeah.
Is if you're looking for subtext, like, that's just so brilliantly done.
Yeah. And you don't need the context of what happens in Age of Resistance, how we see how the Gartham was created. They're already scary, and we know nothing about them. They're already terrifying. But should you decide to open that door and watch Age of Resistance and get that subtext, or extra context, I should say, it's very, like, it's awesome to have that extra information. But it's like, what makes a scary bad guy is often what you don't know. The mystery of it. The fact that when you see this movie for the first time, all you know is that these guys are massive. They appear to be completely soulless. All they know is what their job is. They literally are unstoppable. They're like Terminators. They're Terminators, essentially. They have their directive, and they're out to terminate, and that is their whole life's purpose. And then when they're done, they're just like, power down. And also, if anybody out there is a fan of Stephen King's Dark Tower series, there's these, like, monsters that are like evil crabs, and when they talk about them in the books, they talk about the da-da-chuck, the clicky-clacky sounds that they make, and how foreboding it is when you hear the clicky-clacks. I immediately was like, Gartham! That's 100% that evil crustacean click clack click clack click, foreboding clack clacks. That's so effective. So effective. Lobsters are terrifying and delicious.
There's this line that's in the film that I made special note of when I was watching today. It's so sad. It's just when Jen is feeling guilty about the fact that the Dartham have come through and and taken the podlings, and he thinks he's to blame. And then when Kira says it's not your fault, the Dartham have always come. That is just such a sad line. It's like the fact that that's a.
This is just another Tuesday for us, dude. They're here all the time. Like, oh, is that supposed to be comforting, Kira? Like, oh my God. Man, don't worry, Jen. It's just a genocide. Yeah, so dark. It's not the happy crystal. It's not the fuzzy crystal.
That's the thing. There is just so much in this movie that, like, for an 80s fantasy movie, and from Jim Henson, who you think, there might be parents who are thinking, no, it's the guy who did the Muppets.
He's a little goth inside. He's a little bit.
Yeah, this is so dark and disturbing, a lot of this stuff. And that's what makes it so brilliant. I love that about it. But yeah.
But look at so many other fantasy movies of the genre, and we really weren't afraid to go there at the time. I mean, I'm also currently sporting a Legend T-shirt right now with Tim Curry. That's another one of my top 5 all-time favorite movies, and it's like dark as hell fantasy movie. And same thing with the one that Phil and I mentioned, Return to Oz. God, that movie's terrifying.
Yes, yeah.
So dark, so freaky, such nightmare fuel.
That is one that I definitely remember from childhood, and like. Just, I don't know if it even so much scared me, but it disturbed the heck out of me.
Yeah, like it sticks with you.
Because like even I tried to watch it probably a couple of years ago on Blu-ray, and I think I might have only got for the first like maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then like after I got that far, I'm just like, damn, this movie's really depressing.
Yeah. How did I do this as a kid?
I know. How did I went through this movie as a kid? Yeah.
It's on Disney Plus now, actually, and it's amazing to me. I think about all the little kids now who are like stumbling upon it, and maybe like their parents put it on. Oh, look, a Wizard of Oz movie. Let's put this on, Billy. And the kids, That sounds so awesome.
So Disney.
Imagine they had like a playlist for the Oz movies. You had Oz, Great and Powerful, and then Return to Oz next to it.
Cool! It's a sequel.
It's like Disney Plus. We're not going to put like adult R-rated movies on here, but we'll put on the Return to Oz. It's like that's worse.
Yeah, I'm not mad at it. Like, hey, I'll toot the gateway horror train all day long, and there's a reason why there are so many of us in our 30s and 40s who are massive horror movie fans, because we got traumatized by puppets and we loved it. I'm dying on that hill. So it is what it is, bro.
I have a request from Blue Lemons to make sure we mention the Landstriders.
Yes.
Which is just ingenious. The fact that they came about because the stunt people in the production said, "Hey, we can do this thing where we're on stilts."
Check this out.
Yes. Yeah.
And Jim Henson was a tall, lanky fellow. He was a giant beast of a man. And so I think it was probably refreshing for him to be like, looking up at people, I imagine. Yeah. It's not something I can relate to. I'm 5'2" on a good day when I've got chunky sneakers on. But Jim Henson, though, I imagine it was a nice, refreshing breath of fresh air to see people on stilts all around him. So I can't help but wonder if that was a little bit of his motivation. But there's something so awesome about it. Like, I love it.
I was just seeing behind the scenes because I think originally they were meant to be spiders. I think that they were gonna was it spiders or some like creatures? I think they were gonna be on, and then they changed it to, once they tested out performance on the stilts, that it sort of just turned out a lot better. Yeah.
So awesome. And when I go I see your comment, Blue Lemons, by the way, and like find me on Instagram, find me on Facebook. Let's be friends. making friends on the chat. So when I go to like Halloween Horror Nights or like any spooky haunt type thing, the people on stilts are always like my favorite of all the monsters. I just like, it's so cool. It's so effective. And for the Landstriders, like as a little kid, I'm trying to think back to when I was 4 years old and I didn't have the context of knowing these were dudes on stilts. They're the most like, when you're a little kid seeing it for the first time, they're one of the creatures that are the most like, how did they do that? Like, what is happening? What am I looking at right now? Like, there's no way that's a puppet. And it's terrifying, but also like you love them. And I've heard so many stories from people who are like, oh, the Landstriders terrified me because of their funky little squid mustaches or whatever, and the fact that they were huge. And I always thought they were just like adorable, and the fact that Kira called them and they were like her buddies and they like fought for her, and I was like so sad. The ones that fell off the cliff was like genuinely heartbroken. I'm never going to be okay with that.
I think of a lot of the creatures in the Dark Crystal, they're kind of some of the least scary.
Yeah, so they're sweet. I guess, you know, from a stilt perspective, I guess, when you consider like when something's so massive and so alien. And I think ultimately it's the fact that of all the creatures, they're one of the most alien and most unfamiliar. They don't look like anything we have. Like, they're kind of supposed to be like, wait. Blue Lemon says, Landstriders were a family of giraffe bunnies. And the family just gets obliterated. Yeah. They are kind of like giraffe bunnies because their bodies are sort of like, their faces are sort of rabbit-like. And then they're super high up like giraffes. But they, like, you have to think about it to figure out what animals do they really look like. They're so otherworldly and strange. And to a lot of people, that's what truly is scary, is I don't have anything real to connect and associate this with. That's where the terror comes from. I was not like that. I was like, I want one. I want a giant bunny giraffe friend.
Yeah.
And speaking of the Landstriders, then we get that great moment where Jen and Kira, you know, hop on them, and Kira's like,
hold on, Jen. They go fast.
Yeah. Well, no, but why's my mind going blank, and I'm all of a sudden forgetting names.
Is it a line?
Fizzgig. And it's just, no, you stay here. And he does his, you know,
the iconic GIF. That's the iconic GIF that we as page moderators see more than any other GIF in the world, and some of us are grumpy about it. I'm not mad at it. Come on. You don't call yourself a Dark Crystal fan if you're annoyed by seeing a Fizzgig GIF, but that's the one. That's the moment where he's like, ah! And I love it, because whose child has not done that? And when I say child, I mean human child, but also animal child, because who doesn't have a pet that's thrown a tantrum when you're like, no, you stay. It's very relatable. I've also felt like that.
I just love later when he falls down the chasm and manages to catch himself.
Yeah. I also imagine that was fun for the puppeteers. Like the moment when Kira says, "Oh, okay, get up here on the Landstrider," somebody like yeeted him. Like the puppeteering of it was somebody literally just like chucked him, and it was probably the same thing when they chucked him down the cavern. It's like, okay, it's time for the scene where Fizzgig falls down. I love it. I imagine that was so fun. And Agra getting her little stick out and rescuing the Fizzgig was just another iconic moment. Who doesn't want a Fizzgig on a stick after that?
I just love the fact that she's just, you know, sort of jabbing him with the stick. It's like, come on. Let's
go, hurry up. Like, she's so begrudgingly like, this damn kid about it, but like she still does it though. You're sold on Agra by then if you weren't before. You're like, she goes to save the dog, so to speak, so she's all right.
I feel like there's so much more we could have talk about the movie, because there's so much. But before we wrap things up, just is there anything else about the movie that you guys want to mention?
Phil, go first, because otherwise I'll.
I don't know. Yeah, it's again, it's just such an incredible film for anyone that hasn't had a chance to check it out or the show. Do check it out. And yeah, I mean, it is a weird film that it still holds up to this day. Even the Dark Crystal is like almost be 40 years next year, and it still holds up pretty well.
Yeah. And if what's holding you back is the fact that you tried to watch it when you were 6 or 7 and it weirded you out, well, guess what? You're not 6 or 7 anymore. You're an adult now, so you should try it. Yeah. You should sit down and try to watch the movie and take in, just go on a fairy tale ride for a minute and appreciate just the artistry of this. Is something unlike. It goes against all of the formulas of what we're being fed in our media nowadays. And that's not me just hating on I'm not being an old grandpa, I swear, but it does really fly in the face of the formulas that we have nowadays of being oversaturated, overcomplicated, everything overexplained. It's just a nice fable that's dark, that gets you thinking, that makes you curious and makes you want to explore this completely other alien world that's completely unlike ours. And yet the messages are very relevant to us. So please give it another try as an adult, and then go watch Age of Resistance, because oh my goodness, watch them, and then listen to our podcast and geek out with us and be part of our family.
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't think he's here anymore, or maybe he might be listening in the background, but my good friend, really my brother Steven, I love him. But he was not sold on the show. He found it hard to get into the puppetry. And then I asked him to please give it another shot. He got, I believe, almost all the way through it, except for like the last 2 episodes, and has not finished the show. I want you guys to guilt him.
Shame! Obligatory shame. Yeah, I mean, listen, we all have lives. We got priorities. I get it. If I had a nickel for every person who's asked me if I've watched Sweet Tooth yet, I'd be a bajillionaire and I'd be flying to space right now. But, we have our lives. But when you are in that moment of, hey, what do I feel like watching right now? Just finish it. Just give a little extra nugget of data to Netflix to let them know, people do care about this. Maybe we were big giant idiots for canceling it. I don't know. Maybe.
I went through such a crisis after that happened about whether, because initially it was like, I'm going to cancel Netflix. I never want to see anything Netflix again. But then it's
there's no other way to rewatch the show then, because they didn't release it on Blu-ray.
Which, it was so funny when you guys said you had an announcement, and I was like, do they have secret intel on the Blu-ray
Sometimes
release?
We do, but
yeah. No, yeah,
we would not be withholding that. Nah.
No. We had to be upfront about. Yeah, it's definitely not about a follow-up for Age of Resistance or anything at the time when we announced about that the adventure game. So, yeah.
It would be impossible to hold that information secret and cruel. We're not cruel people. We can tease here and there when it's stuff pertaining to us, but we have souls. We're not going to be like, keep this secret. Oh God, if we found out that there was going to be a Blu-ray release or even a DVD, I would accept a DVD. God, I'll be a caveman. And I would shout it from the rooftops. I would sing it to everyone who would listen, and people would be like, "Shut up, lady!" And I'd be like, "No!" That's what would happen. You could not get me to stop talking about it if we got that news. Season 2, likewise.
I would really complain a lot if they only released on DVD, and yet I would still buy it because it would be real physical, evidence that this show exists, and it wasn't just to the whims of Netflix.
Yeah,
whether it
friggin' anything, man. Gah.
Dark Crystal Conjunction wants to know if you guys are going to stream some RPG sessions.
Yes.
Possibly, yes.
To that. Yes.
Yeah.
We need time. Give us a little time, but it is in the works. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I think really once we get into the adventure of the game, actually getting the book and being able to read it and consume all that, all the scenes and all the, the rules and all that kind of stuff, then get into it.
And he also said, Dark Crystal Conjecture said, also give me a VHS of it. Like, I mean,
of the show.
You don't think I'd buy that? I 100% would. Remember when they released Titanic and it was like 4 VHSs? They do that with Age of Resistance. It'd be like a box set of a series. Oh, man. I'd buy it. Put it on my shelf.
Like, and I actually still have a couple VHS tapes, but I had a lot of VHS tapes that I refused to give up for many years because they were very important to me. But sooner or later, you run out of space. So.
Yeah, it's true. I did see a little bit of a tangent, but somebody made an end table out of their old VHSs. Like, they glued a stack of them together as the base, and then they like coated it in resin, and then they like made the tabletop, and they did like a collage of all the VHS covers, like and made a whole little table out of it. And I was like, wow, that's cool. I should do that. I'm not going to, but I should. That's a cool idea. Just something to think about, or make like a little display wall out of it. I've seen that also. Pinterest is a wild place for ideas for all our 90s kid hoarding. Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah.
We could literally be here for 3 hours, you guys. We could.
Yeah.
But I need to eat eventually, man.
So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Just once more, I want to let everybody know that next week I'll be talking about Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest with Christina, and then The Green Knight the following week with Blue Lemons, and I'll have more to announce soon.
Very exciting.
Guys, where can they find you, and anything else you want to mention?
So I mean, you can just find us darkcrystalpodcast.com. That's where we put all our news or episodes about it. I mean, obviously you can subscribe on any podcast platform that exists, like Apple Music, and then Google Podcasts, Spotify. I think we're everywhere. I think I'm pretty certain now. So,
but if your starting point is the website, it'll lead you to everywhere else, like the Facebook, the Instagram, Twitter.
Yes.
All the downloadable places you can get it. But we've been posting a lot of stories on Instagram lately about all the fan art from Inktober. We do a lot of announcements on Facebook. We're very frequent on the Crystal Shard Facebook group. It's a Dark Crystal fan group on Facebook. If you are a grandpa like us and you're still on Facebook, join the Crystal Shard because it's a really fun place where we share fan art and theories and discussions and news and updates about all things Dark Crystal. I'm Black Star Far Dreamer on Instagram. I post art and stuff and Halloween related things. Most of my content right now is Halloween related, so if you're into that, cool. Anything else? We about covered it. River Horse.
It covers everything.
Pre-order the River Horse, the Dark Crystal RPG.
The adventure game.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can pre-order it now. It's out in December.
Yes. Later this year. So, and then also we got that the Halloween event. So that'll be coming out on the 30th to 31st of October. So definitely expect more details to come on what's to come for the event.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, you guys, because originally I had asked you guys if you wanted to do this on the 30th, and then you guys said you had something going on. Then I saw that. I was like, oh, yeah, that's definitely a priority.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. The Dark Crystal and Halloween combining is kind of like my entire identity uniting.
Right.
Can't miss that. So we love you, but priorities.
Exactly.
This has been so awesome, though, man. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much.
No, thank you guys. It's just, this has been great. I've, when you guys said that you would do this, I was like, this is so great, because I've been itching to talk to you guys and ask you questions. So thank you.
All good.
And and thank you everybody for tuning in. It's my understanding that this might be available as a podcast episode. So Obviously, if you're already hearing this message, then you've already watched or listened. So,
yeah.
But for anybody who hasn't tuned in, they'll be able to catch it.
If you want to relive it forever and ever and show everyone that you love, then yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in. It's such a blast to be back. And just thank you. And if you haven't watched either The Dark Crystal or Age of Resistance, fix that. Go do it. And I'm going to fix the fact that I haven't read J.M. Lee's books yet and get on
that. Definitely, yeah.
Anyway.
I'll be checking in. I am your real dad.
Absolutely. Anyway, have a wonderful night, everybody, and I'll see you next week.
Bye.
It's all right. Bye-bye.